Vast and variable, the remote landscapes of southern Chile are spellbinding. It's one of the wildest places on the planet, Chilean Patagonia. The Carretera Austral is a 1,240-kilometre stretch of road that serves as an artery into the very heart of this wilderness. The terrain here was once deemed impassable, carving a road through these expanses utopian. Little by little, construction of the Carretera Austral, also known as the Southern Highway, has advanced, creating access to this natural paradise. The road connects distant fjords with major cities and is an economic lifeline for Chile's salmon industry. Join us for a road trip full of surprises to explore the magical landscape and meet the people of Chilean Patagonia. It's a 13,000-kilometre journey from Germany to Patagonia in southern Latin America. Patagonia stretches across both Chile and Argentina. Chile's Carretera Austral might one day connect the centre of the country with its southern tip, but to date the road remains incomplete and getting south requires crossing into Argentina. Our journey begins in the Chilean port city of Puerto Montt. This is the starting point of the Carretera Austral, also known as Route 7. After some 60 kilometres, Patagonia begins to show its wild side. The road is soon interrupted by a fjord. It's one of the many, especially along the northern section of the Carretera Austral. Ferries transport cars across, but the Chilean government eventually wants to replace them with road.
Okay, Popa Clara.
Captain Stanislav Medina isn't worried about his job yet.
The project to replace the ferry connections with the road will take at least 30 years. They'll have to build bridges and tunnels. It's a long-term project. I might be dead by the time it's done.
Travelling the entire Carretera Austral involves several ferry connections. This stretch across the Comau Fjord is more than 60 kilometres. Could a road really be built across such wild terrain? Critics are sceptical. They say a modernised ferry system would be a more efficient solution. But the government has given the road project a green light. In this still very sparsely populated region, only few people would actually make use of the road. The first stop on our journey lies on the banks of the Comau Fjord. German marine biologists work at this research station in the Bay of Huinay. It can only be reached by boat across the fjord. It offers scientists a unique environment for research. Frini Heusemann is in charge of the station. We meet up with her ahead of our trip at her home in Puerto Montt.
The Comau Fjord has the same pH value that the oceans are predicted to have in the year 2100. So it provides us with a glimpse into the future. We can see how coral will live in the oceans 100 years from now.
Researchers here specialise in cold water corals that only grow in these fjords. They grow so close to the surface of the water that scientists can dive down and explore them. Frini has discovered more than 50 new species. She's officially named some after her children and husband. But she's made troubling observations in recent years. Entire coral reefs have died out from one year to the next. And in April 2015, she made another alarming discovery at a different fjord.
It felt apocalyptic. We looked around and saw one dead whale after another. We were so shocked. We flew over the area in a small plane and using GPS tracked every whale we spotted. We were just clicking the whole time. And I thought, I've seen 100 now, and then even 300. The beach was just littered with dead whales. It was terrible. It was the biggest whale stranding in history.
The researchers counted 360 dead sei whales during this observation flight. Frini believes the total was substantially higher.
We know from the U.S. northeastern Atlantic that only 5 to 10% of the gray whales that die in shallow water get washed up onto the beaches. If those 360 whales constituted 5 to 10% of the number that died, then we're looking at a frightening figure. One that seriously jeopardizes the sei whale population in the southern hemisphere. The cause of death was most likely a red tide, the Marea Roja, as it's called here.
The red tide gets its name from the colour given to water by microscopic algae that release toxins. These can be fatal to certain types of sea life.
Along with environmental pollution in general, the Marea Roja is increasing around the world. We see changes that can be attributed to anthropogenic causes.
These anthropogenic causes, meaning caused by human activity, could very well be increased economic activity in the region. Little has impacted it as much as industrial salmon farming, which was brought to Patagonia with the arrival of the Carretera Austral. Today, it's the biggest employer in southern Chile. A seasonal worker gives us an insider's look into the business.
It's the same like farming chickens or pigs. It's an industry just like any other.
On his cell phone, he's recorded video of his job on one of the floating farms.
It's gigantic. In one farm, there are 10 enclosures each with 40,000 fish. This is the injection gun. These are the hoses, and the medicines and vaccines go through these. This is how you use the gun. You take it in this hand and inject the drugs into the fish. Just imagine, the fish is subjected to this, but it's not even sick. It's like the fish is on drugs. We use a blue paste called benzocaine. It's like an anesthetic. It keeps the fish calm when you hold it in your hands. They chuck in 120 kilograms of fish food a day. And of those 120, the fish eat maybe 40, and the rest sinks to the seabed. That's industrial pollution. But no one's bothered. You just come, do the job, and leave.
Fisherman Boris lives opposite the research station on Comal Fjord. He was born and raised here.
I like it here. How many people get the chance to live in a place like this?
Many bays that Boris used to fish in are now occupied by salmon farms. In their proximity, he's caught some very unusual fish.
You can catch sea bass now that look like salmon. They've been dumping chemicals and salmon food into the water for so long, the bass now have the skin and color of salmon. There are tons of them here.
Boris built his house in an isolated bay on the edge of a huge nature reserve called Pumalin Park. The park was founded by the American philanthropist Douglas Tompkins. He made his fortune with outdoor apparel brands. In the 1990s, he retired from the business world, sold his shares for more than $100 million, and together with his wife, acquired wide swathes of land in Patagonia. On the biggest portion of their property, the Tompkins created Pumalin Park. More than 3,000 square kilometres in size, the park stretches from the Argentine border all the way to the Chilean fjords. Its existence created another obstacle for the Carretera Austral. The Tompkins rejected the prospect of a paved road intersecting the park. Locals were suspicious. Some accused Douglas Tompkins of staging a land grab.
Because he'd bought such a huge area of land, thousands of hectares, people said, this gringo wants to set up his own state and let no one else in except himself. It was only later that I started to understand it wasn't like that at all. This was about protecting what you have, making the most of your resources. Because a tree doesn't grow overnight. It takes up to 500 years for trees like this to grow back.
It's said that Tompkins was looking for the world's oldest tree before he decided on the site of his nature reserve. Ranger Sergio has been working at Pumalin Park for more than 10 years. He knows a lot about its primeval flora.
We're crossing the Mañillo forest. These gigantic Mañillo trees are about 100 to 150 years old. You can hear the frogs and toads that live in the wetland here. This is one of the millennia-old alerce trees. I think it's the biggest one we have in Pumalin Park. It's about 3,000 years old.
These enormous alerce trees, also known as Patagonian cypress, don't grow anywhere else in the world.
It's an honor to work here in the park and protect these fantastic trees. More than anything, they're a lung for the world. Without the protection of Pumalin Park, the forest will be facing disaster. Before, there was no respect for nature.
Douglas Tompkins died in a kayaking accident in 2015, but that didn't spell the end of his conservation project.
He gave us a vision. Now we, the young people, and all the future generations, need to care for and protect the park. This isn't the end. Pumalin Park will live on for a long time.
In 2017, Tompkins' widow, Christine McDivitt Tompkins, handed over all of the land she and her husband acquired to the Chilean government. It was the largest ever donation of private land to a government in South America. But there was one condition, that the state turn all of it into national parks. Our journey takes us out of Pumalin Park and back onto the Carretera Austral. We're heading south to our next stop, Chaiten. The small harbour town on the Gulf of Corcovado is just a shadow of its former self. Struck by a natural disaster in 2008, residents were forced to flee. Less than half have returned to rebuild their lives here. Chaiten volcano, located inside Pumalin Park, erupted without warning. A cloud of smoke rose kilometres into the sky. Vast quantities of scree and lava destroyed parts of Chaiten town, located just 10 kilometres from the volcano. The volcano had not erupted for more than 9,000 years and was considered dormant. But in seconds, magma shot out of a depth of 5 kilometres, cutting a swathe of destruction. It will take a long time for the region to recover. Just a few kilometres on and the splendour of Patagonia's landscape unfolds again. Heading further south, our next stop is Villa Santa Lucia. And we meet one resident who devoted his working life to the Carretera Austral.
My name is Mario Inostroza, and I'm a retired army soldier.
Mario was a member of the Military Labour Corps for 35 years and proudly shows us photos documenting his career. The Corps was formed in 1976 when the building began. It was pioneering work under the most adverse conditions. Mario's company was there from the start.
Why was the army involved? Because no private sector companies wanted to work there. It wasn't profitable.
Mario is still proud of his unit's achievements, clearing the first path into the wilderness using axes and shovels.
There were times when we'd progress only 10 or 20 meters in a whole month. It was so difficult. Firstly, to divert the water, and secondly, to create a stable road. These sections here were very hard. Look how much construction machinery there is now. We didn't have all that in our day. It's wonderful to see all this machinery down here today.
In the early stages, building the road was back-breaking work. Up to 10,000 men worked here all year round. There were no weekends. 45 workers lost their lives during construction. Prisoners could trade in 2 years of their sentence for a year working on the road. Mario volunteered for 35 years. Like many others here, he still refers to the road by its original name, Carretera Austral Augusto Pinochet.
The person who actually planned this and had the determination to make it happen was General Pinochet. People who now want to change the name don't understand what really went into creating it. My general left us with technology, improvement, and asphalt. It's just fantastic.
Augusto Pinochet came to power in 1973 in a military coup. His 4-member government was made up of the commanders of the army, navy, and military police. Rodolfo Stanger is one of the last surviving members of the junta. Stanger joined the junta in 1985 as head of the National Police Force, the Carabineros. He remained in government until the fall of Pinochet's regime in 1990. Now 93, Stanger is of German descent.
This picture here, it's a photo, isn't it? No, it's a painting. It hangs in the museum in Santiago, along with all the generals. This is a picture of me. This is Pinochet. The Pope, General Fernando Matei, head of the Air Force, and me. The two of us were called the Germans. The other members of the junta sometimes made fun of us because we spoke in German to each other when we needed to change our opinion.
The laws were made by just 4 men. Stange still believes that government model offered advantages.
We didn't pass many laws, but the ones we did were good ones. Today, many laws are passed, but they're not all good.
So why was the construction of the Carretera Austral so important to the men of the junta? After all, there was already a well-developed road to the south of Chile via Argentina.
You need to have your own road. It's the same with anything. You can't live half in your own house and half in your neighbor's house. You live in your own house. So it was necessary, essential even, that we create a route on the Chilean side, no matter the cost.
Stange doesn't accept responsibility for everything that happened under the junta.
I'm not saying it was good. Unfortunately, I didn't have anything to do with the deaths. I'm not guilty of anything.
Under the repression of the military dictatorship, more than 3,000 people were killed. Some 27,000 survived torture and political imprisonment. These are the officially recognised figures documented by Chile's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The exact numbers will never be known. But Pinochet is still revered by many today, especially along the Carretera Austral. The atrocities of his regime are dismissed as a necessary evil for the progress of the country as a whole. Our journey leads us to discover a small slice of German history in the village of Puyuhuapi. Puyuhuapi was founded by German settlers in 1935. Traditions are still kept alive here to this day.
Hello, good morning. I'm Friedemann Gerdes, and I've been living in Puyuhuapi for 3 years.
Houses like this are relics of the original German settlement, but they're falling into disrepair. Just outside the village, it's a different picture.
Hello, I'm Helmut Hopperditze. I live in Puyuhuapi, and this is where I work. I've lived around here all my life.
Helmut set up his own successful business. His most important resource is water from the nearby glacier.
Now watch them eat.
Helmut used to breed salmon too, but now he's concentrating on trout.
The salmon industry has gone down the drain.
Helmut believes quality is the key. He only uses organic feed.
I just need a beer, then it'd be perfect.
And he knows a thing or two about beer.
This is the best job. You need to test the bottles every day to see how they're doing. When the bottles are full, they need to be stored for 20 days under a bit of heat. And then the process is complete. Every bottle tells a story. One of them's called the Golden Years. My uncle Walter always used to say the best years of his life were spent here.
It was a long road to these golden years. The founders of Puyuhapi fled poverty in Germany when they emigrated in the 1930s. Amid the isolation and harsh climate, it took all their strength to carve a living from their land. They lived mostly from cattle breeding, forestry and fishing. In 1945, they set up a carpet factory that found national acclaim. To assist them in their arduous work, they enlisted workers from the nearby island of Chiloé. Descendants of the Chilota people today make up the majority of the population here. But the entrepreneurial spirit of the founders still lives on today. Our next stop is a 600-kilometre ride away through the breathtaking landscapes of Patagonia. The further south one travels along the Carretera Austral, the more one often encounters men like this. In Chile, they're known as huasos. The horse and the poncho are part of their centuries-old way of life. Juan Fuentes tends the land of a cattle breeder. He was born and raised here in the Rio Vargas region, and he remembers life before the arrival of roads and other modes of access to civilization.
Our lives changed when the road arrived here. It made it easier in every way.
The next biggest town for Juan used to be a month's horse ride away. Today, it takes a few hours by car.
There were parties in every yard here when the road came. The neighbors brought a calf, and we celebrated.
And another major connection to civilization arrived here just a few days ago.
Acá hacen 4 días que tenemos.
We've had internet connection here for 4 days now.
Llegó las señales en recién 4
These
días
are
atrás.
still baby steps. But we're modern farmers.
Pañales recién nuevito con internet.
Soon we'll have to buy every cow
Ahora
a
ya somos
computer
campesinos más
so they
modernos.
can finally communicate with us.
Vamos a tener que comprarle un computador a cada vaca para que se comunique con nosotros. Yo utilizo todas
I use all the services on offer. Facebook, WhatsApp, email.
Facebook, WhatsApp,
I use them all.
correo electrónico, todos los servicios.
Juan Fuentes also tames Patagonian wild horses.
¿Cómo está mi yegüita?
In the evening, he prepares a cordero, a traditional local barbecue.
De una vaquillita.
This is the meat from a calf.
Queda muy rico con ese sabor a
The smoke
humo,
makes it
sal.
really tasty.
Nada más, pura
Just
sal.
add a bit of salt and that's it. No garlic or anything.
Así no.
Although Juan is in favour of the road, it has changed life as he knows it.
La puerta abierta puede
The
entrar
doors
alguien,
here are always open,
alojarse.
and anyone can come and stay the night.
Y si yo llego a tu casa,
If
por
I came to
ejemplo,
your house, I'd just leave a note saying I'm so-and-so and I was in your house.
Dormí anoche aquí en tu casa.
So the person knows I stayed there, and I didn't take anything.
Alojé.
We don't want to lose that.
Eso es lo que nosotros no queremos que se pierda acá.
He's already learned to love the internet, though, because it means he can keep in regular contact with his daughter, who lives far away. The next morning, Juan is getting ready for a trip. He needs to tend to the cattle up in the mountains, but there's no road. The journey on horseback takes nearly 2 days. Our last stop on the Carretera Austral is fast approaching. The road is blocked once again by a fjord, and we need a ferry to get us to the other side. After 1,240 kilometres through Chilean Patagonia, the Carretera Austral comes to what's currently its end, at a former outpost of the Chilean army, Villa O'Higgins. This last stretch wasn't completed until 1997. Because of its remote location, the airfield has always been essential for the town's survival. Today, the mayor, Ricardo Recabal, is inaugurating a new terminal.
This region has always been isolated because the country lacks geopolitical vision. It's virtually unknown.
There are hopes that the new terminal will increase air traffic. US pilot Vince Beasley has stationed his Cessna 206 here. For several years, he's been flying charter flights from Via O'Higgins to the remotest corners of Patagonia. Only very few pilots dare to venture out into this dangerous terrain. When it comes to maintenance, there's no one he trusts more than himself. He doesn't mind the solitude in Via O'Higgins.
I grew up remote, far away. I don't like living in a city or even a village. I like to live out. And so this gives me a great feeling of I'm the only guy here and I like it.
Vince often gets special assignments. He does survey flights for NASA, and in 2015 he was piloting the plane with the team of scientists who discovered the beached whales in Comau Fjord.
We flew out here to this area and explored here, and we saw a number of dead whales, a few along here, not so many. And then all of a sudden, when we came in this area, there were maybe 35 whales here, 40 there, scattered along some. In this channel alone, there were 100 whales.
Vince goes through the checklist a second time before he takes off.
Tráfico Via O'Higgins, Alpha Tango Whiskey, despegando pista 34, Via O'Higgins.
Via O'Higgins lies at the gateway to the southern Patagonian ice field, the Campo de Hielo Sur. It's the barrier that stopped the further expansion of the Carretera Austral. For pilots, these are tricky skies to navigate.
You have to visualize what the winds are doing around each mountain, either going around it or going over it, coming down a valley, and it's just like water over a rock in the river. So I'm just a kayaker now, a flying kayak. I like the raw beauty. It's much bigger than you are, and you have to respect it.
Vince has had very close encounters with the forces of nature in the Patagonian wild.
It was a perfect day with no wind, very nice visibility, and all of a sudden I saw one of the mountains in front of me growing, and it didn't take me long to realize that it was a volcano, an eruption, and there I got some very good footage filming with my cell phone only.
Vince happened to be flying near the Calbuco volcano when it erupted suddenly in 2015.
And I came within 1 kilometer of the crater and the column of ash erupting. I'm going to concentrate on flying now. The face of it that's reaching the water was about 80 meters high.
The dimensions are overwhelming. The Campo de Hielo stretches for 350 kilometers along the Patagonian Andes. It's a huge obstacle for the Carretera Austral project. To the east, it borders Argentina, and to the west lies a jagged fjord landscape.
Sorry, we can't see more, but this is about as far as I want to go inside.
Weather conditions force Vince to abort the flight. The winds below the cloud cover are too strong, and there's a danger the plane could be swept towards the rocks.
Via O'Higgins, Alpha Tango Whiskey.
Vince bought his Cessna 206 in Alaska and flew it with his wife to Via O'Higgins in several stages over the course of months. Back on the ground, Mayor Roberto Racabal is waiting for us. Before his career in politics, he worked as a truck driver. He transported building materials for the road and witnessed firsthand the enormous changes that came with the road.
The road has brought great progress, but it will also bring poverty to the people of O'Higgins. First, it brought electricity, and then television. My friends in the countryside want to get cars soon, but they don't realize they don't have the money to live such lifestyles. Because people are poor here in the countryside. This is where the road ends. Just a little bit further over there is Argentina, so there's no chance of building the road further here.
Devised by a dictator, construction of the Carretera Austral has pushed farther and farther south for 2 decades. This remote spot is the end of the road. But the dream to create a continuous road to the southern tip of Chilean Patagonia lives on, regardless of the wilderness to be conquered in its path.